Good morning. I was going to continue on with dialectics this morning because we've done a good bit on dialectics, and I was going to explain, start to bring it back. If you start to understand it now at a collective level, at a state level, one country impacting another country, and this is what drives the evolutionary process. As I say, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. But I was going to bring it back to a collective level and then bring it back again to the mind. But before I bring it back to a collective level, I think I'll take a break from it because it can get a bit intense, and I'll talk about something else. And so I decided to take a break yesterday and think about something else. So I decided to think about different things. Yeah, I don't agree with string theory for starters, because I think that their theory is a little bit impractical. But I don't agree with string theory, because in string theory you reckon it's like a violin string in the middle of the quark, and then that vibration starts in the quark and works out. But I don't think that's what causes the vibration. Because one time I used to build factories for the manufacture and handling of animal foods. And on the bins we used to put a vibrator, which was an eccentric sort of a bearing. So you bolt that onto the side of the food bin, and because it was eccentric, when it used to revolve, it used to rattle the whole bin. It used to shake the whole bin. But if you look at an electron, they're not central around the universe, around the nucleus. They're not balanced. They're not positioned centrally around the nucleus. Do you know what I mean? They're eccentric. They're off center. And this what will cause the vibration, not string theory. That's why I don't agree with string theory, and I reckon I'm right. I also don't agree with, if they say the universe is expanding, and I don't agree with this either. It's sort of like geocentrism and heliocentrism. Like before they used to think that the sun revolved around the earth, geocentrism, and then it was that changed to heliocentrism, because their perspective changed. They actually realised they were looking at it wrong. So I reckon when they say the universe is expanding, I also think they're wrong. And I could possibly be as right as they are, because really a lot of physics is a lot of possibilities and probabilities. And it's a lot of possibilities and probabilities, but it's sort of like the philosophy and everything else. They're dogmatic thinking. They're like, somebody thinks maybe, when was the last time somebody thought? Through the Renaissance, maybe. Maybe through the Renaissance was the last time somebody actually thought for themselves. Yeah, it would have been Newton and Leonardo da Vinci, and these were the great thinkers. These were the thinkers. Do you know what I mean? And since then they cling on to these like Newtonian physics, and then this becomes dogma. This is how it is. And then they monetize this, and they assert themselves an authority on the subject. But we are an authority on the subject, and so all thinking is over, and it becomes dogma, because it then becomes into making it into a curriculum and utilizing it to serve their own selfish interests. Basically, it's sort of like the Christians did the same. You know what I mean? This is how it is, and then we won't have this challenged. We won't accept this being challenged. We'll burn you at the stake if you even think about challenges. You're a heretic, and not only are you a heretic, but if you defend the heretic, you're defending the heresy. So we'll control by absolute greed and fear. We'll control by absolute greed and fear. Now this is the instinctual drives, but I'm going to finish with my theory on the expanding universe first. If we come back to the spiral, which if we look at nature as a series of recurrent patterns, and when you look at the recurring patterns, spirals, like right from the ammonite is spirals. So we spiral up, we spiral down, and if you look at Einstein's theory of general relativity, the fabric of space and time is a vortex. So it's like, when you put your coin into the swirly thing in the shopping centre, and the coin goes round and round and round and round, then eventually drops into the hole. Well, the ancient Stoics used to say that we eventually will crash into the sun. That's if we survive that long, because there's a number of things besides climate change that can take us out, such as meteorite showers. But there's a number of things, as they say, but again, we have to navigate our path through the universe. There's a number of things that will determine our end. It's like ourselves, our own choices will very much determine our end. But anyway, it will. But anyway, so I want to say, like, as regards the spiral universe, as we spiral up, the paradox is, because everything is binary and everything's opposites, as we spiral up, if you look at the theory of general relativity, we're also spiraling down, because the fabric of space and time is a vortex like this. So it's not that the universe is expanding, but we're actually getting, do you know what I'm saying? So as we come down the funnel, we think the universe is expanding, but the universe is not expanding. We're just coming down the funnel. Do you know what I'm saying? So from our perspective, the universe is expanding, but we're not expanding. The universe is not expanding. We're just coming down the funnel. Do you understand? So it's sort of like geocentrism and heliocentrism. It's from a different perspective. The universe is not expanding. We're just coming down the funnel. So while we spiral up, we spiral down. And really, the game is, I keep talking about the nature of the game. Now, I'm trying to explain what the game is. So the game is, say, for example, dialectics, and how you have to negate the negation. You have to mitigate the constant. So, for example, like, if you're going to determine the nature of change is, if you have a thesis and you have an antithesis, basically, how well can you force the will to power? So we are all a will to power, but how well can you mitigate this defend yourself against this the thesis? So this will determine the synthesis, is how well you can defend yourself against the antithesis. How well can you hold your ground? It's like any war. How well can you hold your ground? How well can you enforce your will to power? And like any war, the thing that's going to most determine how well you can hold your ground is strategy. And for strategy, you have to fucking think. You must think. You must know the rules of war, the art of war, the art of war, what do we call it? The rules of war and the art of war. So basically, like, the first one is selection and maintenance of the aim. This is the first one: selection and maintenance of the aim. That's rule number one. Is in principles of war, and then in the art of war, the first rule number one in the art of war, which is Sun Tzu, is always use your enemy's dynamic against them, which is what I'm doing now. It's using social media. I'm using my enemy's dynamic against them. This is so why, if we negate the negation, and for example we take all the positive out of every negative, we can understand war. So we understand selection and maintenance of the aim, and always use your enemy's dynamic against them. So if we read books like the Art of War, which would be Sun Tzu, we can actually learn strategy, and which we can apply to everyday life. But this is a choice. Or we can play fucking stupid video games. We can do what the fuck we like. Basically, we can spiral up, we can spiral down. Now, in a case of absolute imperialism versus dialectical materialism, is we can seek to understand the reason behind everything, because everything up to this point, has been an experience, which people haven't really taught for themselves, but yet we're being put through an experience. But for example, I was looking last night at because all my philosophy is given to me in art form now. It's art form now. So I was looking at a thing last night on a program which series which was very much included the Spanish Inquisition, and I'm just there thinking to myself, Jesus, so much fucking fear and greed, because fear and greed has driven the whole dialectics. And the thing is, you see, if you look at the human experience, it's very much monkey see, monkey do. So the whole greed thing gathers momentum and becomes a thing in perpetual motion. So the greed what's the word? Exponentially. The greed grows exponentially, the fear grows exponentially, but the two balance, the two drive the whole thing. But it doesn't have to be like this, and you have to start. And then you can say to yourself, well, how much free will do we have? Well, when are you going to start thinking, fuckers? When are you going to start thinking, like? Because I was there sitting there last night looking at all this fear and greed, and this was like fear and greed, and I said to myself, like, because the greed was the Christians and the whole Spanish Inquisition taking everybody's shit, the will to power, controlling everybody through fear. And I was there thinking to myself, when are these fuckers going to actually start questioning this shit? When are they going to start questioning this shit? But they didn't question this shit. Well, maybe like they're too lower animal to actually question this fear and greed. Overcome these primeval instincts, these instinctual drives of fear and greed. But still, all we have now is a higher concept. So what we have now, for example, in climate change and COVID and all this shit, is the same fucking thing. Fear and greed. Fear making you shite your pants, you're going to die. The world is coming to an end, you're all going to hell, you're all going to die, you know what I mean? But at the same time, capitalising on your fear. But you know what I mean? But nobody's thinking rationally, nobody's actually standing back and overcoming the fear and greed, the dogma, the fear and greed. Nobody's questioning the authorities. Nobody questioned the Grand Inquisitor. Nobody fucking... Do you dare question the Grand Inquisitor? Do you question me? I'm an authority on the subject. I'm Jordan Peterson. I'm an authority on the subject. But nobody questions the authority. Nobody thinks for themselves. You're all being motivated by fear and fucking greed. But the thing is to start fucking thinking. And then you have free will. That's what I said last night. At what point are these fuckers going to start thinking for themselves? And this is the purpose of philosophy. And this was, and then I said to myself, because if we stand back and we look at the reason behind everything, I just said to myself, like, well, the whole thing is an experience, but at what point, like, you know, like absolute idealism, everything is controlled. But I said, at what point are these fuckers going to start thinking for themselves? And now is the time. I'm giving you a perspective that you can consider, or you can continue with the dogma. That you can continue to think, believe in string theory. You can continue to believe that the universe is expanding, because you're not questioning the authorities. I'm giving you a reasonable and valid theory. But of course, it's like your man here with the physics. When I was trying to explain physics from my teacher, the very same as my philosophy from my teacher, he was saying to me, "Oh, I need evidence." And I says, "No, mate, no, you have to think. You have to think. What you want me to do is go away and present you a body of evidence which could take me 20 years, rather than you think. You have to think, sir. And at the same time, then my body of evidence has to go through the creators of truth, the mathematicians, the deciders and creators of truth, before it can even be accepted as a truth. But no, you have to fucking think, lads. You have to fucking think. At some point. Now, another thing I was thinking about then as well is the fact of the absolute idealism and the dialectical materialism and the reason behind everything. And I said to myself, first of all, we had the absolute idealism, which was the fear and greed from the church. And I had to think about all sorts of things, because, like, in that conversation the other morning, we were talking about Martin Luther as well, and that girl was saying, like, that Martin Luther went to Rome and saw the church getting money for the annulments, the church getting money for everything, church getting money to the church, and the fear and greed of the church. So Martin Luther did think for himself. Yes, and he challenged this. But the thing is, what you see in others, look for in yourself first. He then went along and has a church tax in Germany, and there's still a church tax in Germany. Do you know what I'm saying? So at least the church was at their own volition, but he just went to tax the cunts. Do you know what I mean? I may go.